Hello, my name is Edward Nichols, and I am currently finishing up my master's in education at Western Oregon University. I have an emphasis on K-8 STEM education. This is the defense or the video presentation of my professional project, Increasing Opportunities for Integrating Makerspaces into Rural Elementary Schools. I believe in the power of makerspaces. These are areas where students can go in, work with hands-on materials, spaces that are imbued with technology, that are just I've seen this in my own school and in other schools around the state, and it's the amount of engagement that you get out of this and the value is amazing. I've also seen educators in my own district ask what a makerspace is, and to me that's interesting, and I really thought that needed to be addressed. So I've included a video in my presentation that I'm not going to show here, but I would encourage people to watch this for a couple minutes. This is Cooper Mountain Elementary here in Oregon. Just enjoy watching students interact, teach each other, social learning, they're constructing. Again, this is just amazing. So please watch a few minutes of that. I don't have time at this point for that. Okay, my project rationale. I believe there's a huge gap between how our students are going to interact with the world and how they currently interact with the world outside of school and expectations within the school. Things like sitting still, doing worksheets. It just feels uncomfortable and wrong to me. And later on, we'll go into the research about that. But yeah, after teaching for 5 years, I just recognize that there seems to be this large gap. Um, Makerspaces, I believe, offer an alternative, an experiential learning lab or area where collaboration occurs. You can provide authentic tasks for students to work with. As I said, I grew up and now I teach in a rural area, and I believe this has shaped my own processes. And I'm looking to create more community connections, emphasize, pulling in more resources for schools, emphasizing for students that this is relevant. Learning is relevant to you, okay? And promoting, of course, advocacy for rural education. That's what a big part of this is. So this is really two pieces: makerspace education into the schools and supporting rural educators in implementing those spaces. I have a couple of pictures here. On the left, you'll see our typical, our North Bay makerspace. Kids are engaged, they're collaborating. This was all with me on the side. I didn't form groups, I didn't assign tasks. This was all engagement created by students. On the right-hand side is a picture from my classroom earlier this year where boys were just wrestling on the ground, avoiding typical or traditional tasks that we do inside my classroom. Okay, so moving on to literature review, or the review of research that's backing up all this. I've identified 5 major themes that support not only learning and increasing that, but engagement as well. So, of course, the top one I put in there is making learning fun. I really think that if I'm not having fun and the students aren't having fun, we're just not going to make as much headway. Okay, encouraging student choice. This is not a surprise to anybody who's researched education before. Fostering a sense of community, providing opportunities for hands-on learning, incorporating technology in some form or another. And that technology can be, well, we'll go into that in just a moment. Personalizing student instruction. So let's go a little bit deeper into each of these. Making learning fun. Students who are engaged are learning more. You have fewer behaviors. It just means you can move forward. Whether or not you're trying to address a standard, you can do both. You can be addressing like a social emotional component or a Common Core or NGS standard. If it's fun, kids are going to move forward faster and in a more meaningful way. Encouraging choice. Again, we all know this. If you're given two or three choices in what you get to do, you're going to have more buy-in. Okay. Fostering a sense of community. Makerspaces are all about community. And this is not only classroom community, but beyond. Bringing community in from your area, bringing in experts or people who have a skill. It doesn't have to, STEM is a huge umbrella. It can be a carpenter, it can be a forest biologist, anything. Just getting that sense of community, not only again outside in industry, but right in the classroom. You saw the picture earlier of the kids in our makerspace collaborating, working together. This wasn't something that so and so will partner with so and so. You will do this. This was the students all on their own, creating community authentically, providing hands-on opportunities for hands-on learning. This is key. Students, especially in the elementary level, they're going from concrete thinkers to abstract. Everything's has to move from concrete to abstract. Touching things, feeling things, working with sphero robots, working with cardboard modeling. This all helps that concrete move into the abstract. It all helps also just, fine motor skills. Again, sharing of materials. There's so much that goes on with hands-on learning. Incorporating technology is a huge piece, and I'm talking technology as simple as scissors and cardboard. To me, this is technology. This is something that we've had to make to supplement our lives. And of course, you can go all the way up to Bluetooth driven coding robots that are super cool and kids get really engaged with. But I don't want to forget the technology, again, is something as simple as even the crayon or the colored pencil. So incorporating that daily into students' lives is a great idea. Again, high tech and low tech, a combination between the two. And personalizing instruction. When I teach, or when I've taught for the last 5 years, I've been guided by curriculum to tell the students exactly what they need to be doing, almost down to the minute. And I don't believe that that is equitable. I don't believe that reaches every student. I think students should have some choice, and honestly, authentic choice as well. I believe that students need to be moving through their curriculum with their own ideas, applying knowledge that, I have taught them through direct instruction, applying that to whatever construct they would like to do. And that's, again, maker spaces. That comes into this. You can read about the three little pigs and build the three houses and test them out and just make this real for students. It's amazing. And then letting students go down that pathway. I've had trouble with personalizing instruction, the more open-ended um, sort of ideal. But I do believe that if we train students up starting in kindergarten or even pre-K, by the time they get to third grade where I am, that this would be even easier as the years go on. Again, through hands-on learning, all of these things, all these themes come together. They're not really separate, to tell you the truth. So going a little deeper into these identified themes, we go back into the research. All right, we can go back as far as we want. But I've got to take us a little farther back to the early 20th century, late 19th century, and play and education. We've got three researchers that we've all heard about: Vygotsky, Piaget, and Montessori. Okay, these people believed in play. They believed in hands-on experiential learning. Okay. Vygotsky believed that play was a vital tool for children to develop the higher order thinking skills in conjunction with social interactions. Okay, maker spaces can do this when implemented correctly. Okay. Piaget, of course, ages and stages is the mantra there. But he recognized play as a mechanism for children to explore and make sense, right? So you're exploring in the makerspace, you're making sense of the world around you. Again, that abstract to concrete and back and forth, those constructions. Okay, allowing children to also collaborate in activities promotes cognitive growth as well. And of course, Maria Montessori, okay, highlighted the importance of self-directed learning and independence. While I've been, fostering that sense of community, makerspaces also allow for independent learning on top of that. Students can be off on their own and kind of making sense of the world through their own ideas. Makerspaces provide the ideal environment for play-based learning, especially based on Montessori's principles. Activities can be open-ended. Children have the freedom, or can have the freedom, to make choices and develop their own curiosity. So when we integrate play into makerspaces, we provide children with opportunities to engage in meaningful experiential learning. Okay, makerspaces encourage children to explore, problem solving. So these 21st century skills that I keep hearing about in STEM education, problem solving, collaboration, adaptability. These are all things that our students really need now, but will definitely need as they graduate and move on into the workforce. So that's going back pretty far. Let's move up in time a little bit. I've recently read a few books by Seymour Papin, and he really coined the term constructionism, which keeps showing up around makerspaces. And again, this is a term that and it's not constructivism. It's definitely an evolution of constructivism, but constructionism is the actual hands-on physical manipulation. The theory states that children learn most effectively when actively doing, sounds familiar, or constructing things rather than being taught in sort of that old argument versus schooling versus, really learning. And Pape coined this term in the 1980s. And since then, it really hasn't taken off that I know of. I mean, there's, again, research and literature to back him up, and he's certainly based in the world of Piaget, Vygotsky, Montessori, John Dewey, all those sort of pillars of our current educational system. But what I find sort of disconcerting is when I mention him or his research to, again, colleagues here in rural Oregon, I'm not getting a lot of knowledge around who he was. So moving from the 1980s to much more recent research, okay, there were some big names that kept popping up when when I researched makerspaces, students learning. Woolwind and Pepper, Halverson and Sheridan, and Doucet. These are three big names that show up in my lit review. Okay, they contribute to the understanding of educational makerspaces. Okay, Woolwind and Pepper specifically explored the role of makerspaces in early childhood education. Being a third grade teacher, I have a great interest in that end of the spectrum. They emphasize the value, again, of hands-on learning, experiential learning in makerspaces, creativity, problem solving, collaboration. Again, these recurring themes that keep coming through. Okay. They also, in their research that I was able to find, the authors highlighted how makerspaces provide opportunities for children to construct knowledge through play, creating, and tinkering. Tinkering is another word that shows up a lot, a synonym for making. Okay. Halverson and Sheridan really focused in on how do makerspaces fit into the educational model. Okay. They focus on the pedagogical implications of makerspaces in all of K-12. That's a big ask. They argue that makerspaces can promote a shift from traditional teacher-centered, what I'm currently doing in my practices in my building, to a more learner-centered approach. Okay? They emphasized experiential learning, integrating tools and technology specifically, and they highlighted the potential of makerspaces to, again, develop those 21st century skills, problem solving, innovation, critical thinking. The themes keep coming back. And Doucet in 2017 sort of went more to the higher educational model, which doesn't specifically relate to this, except for the fact that, of course, ideally all of my students are moving to some form of higher education, even if it's not college, it can be um, trades, things like that. So they're going to be, again, growing up. And that's what I'm trying to think of as my students grow up. Doucet emphasizes the value of, again, hands-on learning, experiential learning, theoretical concepts becoming practical projects, okay? And really focused, again, on interdisciplinary. And that's something that I shouldn't minimize. The whole idea that, science is science and math is a math time and ELA has an ELA time. No, project integration, ELA, math, science, physical activity even all come together. They're integrated. And this is more realistic, again, moving forward. As our students go out there in the job force, they're going to be integrating all of the skills that we teach them, all of the knowledge that they get into one project at a time, whatever that might be, instead of having these separate and distinct math, reading, science. It makes a lot more sense to me, and the research supports that as well. And so again, identified 5 themes. All of these things are harder to achieve in the traditional classroom, not impossible with good teaching, but harder to achieve in the traditional classroom, while makerspaces can bring them forward, I believe, in a much easier and more productive way. Okay, So what does this all mean? Makerspaces provide a dynamic and flexible learning environment where students can take control of their learning. They can participate in hands-on activities and they can work at their own pace. I like the idea of that differentiation for these students. There's all sorts of differentiation to improve their learning outcomes. This helps to create a new generation of students who are more engaged, curious, and equipped to move into the next stages, into the world that we don't even know. We don't really know what it's going to look like. So by having something that's more adaptable, like a makerspace, hopefully we're preparing students in a much more effective way. Okay, my methods. So of course I researched and planning, identified the need. I believe that we need more educators in rural areas to be comfortable with makerspaces. I believe that even though we're separated physically and geographically, we can come together. And that is powerful. The power of collaboration is huge. I performed the literature review, which I've already talked about, came up with a project plan, connected with the Rural STEAM Leadership Network. I should have added in the Oregon STEM Hub, Oregon Coast STEM Hub as well. But I'm going to say Rural STEAM Leadership Network has been a key partner in this. Could not have happened without them. Resource development, worried about accessibility. I worked on developing a central hub. We'll go into that later. I performed in-person delivery of content knowledge around makerspaces, specifically elementary ones. I provided 2 distance learning options as well. And let's go into the next steps after that. So here we've got the process, the timeline. So on March 10th, that we had a school PD day at North Bend. I engaged with K-5 educators who chose to attend the PD. They created speaker tubes, worked with pipe cleaners to build a tower, worked with these little indie robots that they could code using silicon tiles. It was an amazing experience. I reached probably at that point around 25 educators that day. The April 26th was the second session. This was online and statewide. Rural STEAM Leadership Network Maker Session 1. I connected with educators across the state. I believe that day there were around 30, between 30 and 40. It was amazing. I took 10 to 15 minutes. The videos are included in my project evidence. And just, again, enjoyed my time. I was pretty nervous, but people came up with good questions. And they also looked through the Padlet that I created for this project. It's available for review as well, and to help support educators as well. May 3rd was a follow-up. It was a shorter session. This was session 2 of the Rural STEAM Leadership Maker sessions, but I went ahead and provided something very specific. Doing my research, I had found that effective professional development really revolves around giving teachers specific, actionable help or support. And so on May 3rd, I went through and introduced a website called Instructables, which is very neat. It's all hands-on. They've just recently linked the projects to grade banding and subject level, like ELA, K2s, and so forth. So I went over that for approximately 10 minutes, and then we let teachers explore. Again, we had around 30 rural educators at this session online as well. And then on May 19th, we had Night Out at North Bay, which was an event that originally started sort of as a fun bouncy house type night. However, in my effort to bring in more educators into the makerspace, more families into the makerspace, I went ahead and held an event out there where students from K-5 levels were building circuits. So exploring electricity, the flow of electrons, describing how a circuit works, open and close, and just having a lot of fun. But really the collaboration and the involvement of, I believe it was 5 of my co-teachers at the school, a bunch of parents, and a bunch of students was amazing. It was just this makerspace, came alive. And it was just, again, exciting to see, awesome to live through. So here we have, moving on from the timeline to the actual project itself. I won't spend a lot of time on the links because people have looked at those already. But this is a map where it sits currently of sort of makerspaces or people who've investigated makerspaces around the state of Oregon. We're really have a wide geographic area from Bannon and Coos Bay to K Falls, Ontario, Joseph, all over the place here. It's amazing. So we're making these connections. I've already worked hard to build these connections for rural educators. And then the resource palette itself is linked there. People already explored that as well. It is growing, it's building. The resource Padlet it's alive. It's not a static thing. It's continually changing, improving, and hopefully in the future I will follow through on I will follow through on adding more things. And I just want to point out this picture here of my students. These students built a wind tunnel, and the goal was to have an object sit in the wind tunnel, to not fly out of the wind tunnel and to not sink in the wind tunnel. Sort of a buoyancy but with air sort of experiment. And the kids did so amazing. They had to build the wind tunnel. They had to build their successful prototype. Amazing night there. Awesome. So reflections and where we're going next. Well, I believe that I've successfully increased collaboration between rural Oregon educators who are seeking alternative pathways for their students. I just found out recently through an email that I was featured in the Oregon STEM Hub Oregon Coast STEM Hub eBlast. And at that point, my Padlet link and resource was shared out to all the educators along the Oregon coast, which is pretty amazing. So already we're moving forward in ways that are more quickly, honestly, than I anticipated. So rural educators seek continued PD professional development opportunities around makerspace funding, student activities, collaboration between educators from other schools. So these are priorities. As a part of my presentations through the Rural STEAM Hub, I sent out a Google form link. This is included, of course, in my document itself. And the Google form link had some purposeful questions on there that teachers answered. And these themes came up from over and over from educators again. How are we funding makerspaces? How are we going to fund makerspaces? What activities should I do? And how can I collaborate with people, not only in my building, but statewide as well? So these are the ideas, the professional developments that I will seek to move forward with. I've already responded to these questions that came through the Google form. I've already responded by altering the Padlet and providing more resources around these areas. I'm going to continue to seek opportunities to connect rural educators. I'll be working with as many STEM hubs as possible. It sounds like the Oregon Coast STEM Hub is very interested in PD around makerspaces. I know the Rural STEAM Network has been kind enough to let me present with them as well, and I hope that relationship continues. I'm willing, and I would want to travel around Oregon and provide in-person PDs. While I like Zoom, and I think that communicating electronically has been a boon to teachers around, disconnected rural teachers all over the place. I think that in-person PDs offer that value that's worth going around and presenting in person. And then, of course, working with the Oregon Coast STEM Hub, as I said earlier, I don't know where this is going, but I'm super positive that it's going in great directions. Implications. I want to get back to goals and outcomes for the STEM program at Western. And so the goals for my K-8 STEM master's degree were to effectively use advanced content knowledge and educational technologies, to analyze data and evidence to support learning and engage in change, applying learning theories and research and education in a variety of contexts, and demonstrating professional growth, dispositions, and leadership appropriate in the field of education. So to address each of those, we'll kind of go down this list. I have provided a freely available resource to teachers on makerspaces that integrates best practices, the maker mindset, and practical advice on lesson plans and how to engage and how to run or build a makerspace and how to maintain them as well. Okay, I've used educational resources that support inquiry-based and experiential learning that students can apply in their as we're in the 21st century. how students can learn collaboration, communication, problem solving beyond the school environment. Okay. As for learning theories, I connected with Vygotsky, Montessori, and Piaget from our history, more recently with Seymour Papé and Wolin Wepler and Pepler, Stoiber, all these recent research that support that makerspaces really are beneficial to students in our schools. Okay. And as for developing, professional growth and leadership, I'm helping K-5 teachers participate in professional development by providing the development, by providing an online accessible resource 24 hours a day. But also, it's not just about me, it's about these connections. I know that as we connect educators with each other, leadership will arise, ideas will come together, collaboration will increase our power. Okay, I don't know, I feel uncomfortable saying me. I'm just this vehicle. I'm hoping people will take this and run with it, honestly. And so I've, again, addressed and connected with the Western Oregon standards for a K-8 STEM Maker MS Ed degree. And here we have, again, this final picture, my students during our after-school STEAM club that I led. The goal was for them to build a self-driving car, and they did it. It was amazing. So overall, this project itself right here has increased collaboration between rural Oregon educators, okay, and that's been documented, who are seeking an alternative pathway for students to engage and learn. The Rural STEAM Leadership Network is monitoring the distribution of school maker spaces, and myself as well, through them, and teachers interested in their creation. This project is simply a launching pad for innovation in schools. All right, I thank you. I hope that's answered all the questions. I've gone over time. I apologize profusely. I know that everybody's very busy, and I look forward to feedback. And thank you very much.